Så har vi startet optagelsen, og jeg venter på et go fra Lene her på min telefon. Har du et glas vand?
Ja.
Så siger vi nemlig lige skål på et tidspunkt. Welcome to today's tidbit. Well, it's not a secret that not many of us has been traveling the last year. So what's nicer to do during your lunch than going on a long journey or actually a voyage with the shipping company Norden. Norden has existed, has existed the last 150 years, and they have been on a long journey, and that journey has been described in a book. So let's get the coffee table snack of this book, which has been written by Jes Iversen, who is the Vice Dean of CBS. This is the content of today's tidbit, where we hope that you will also enjoy your lunch. This is actually what tidbits are made for, making sure that you're having your lunch. So that's why it lasts only 30 minutes, the whole tidbit, 15 minutes of presentation and 15 minutes of Q&A-ish. And it's taken from the inspiration from the TED Talks, and it's combined with with a talk show. So that is also why we have the backgrounds from our homes and no blurred backgrounds or logo backgrounds. That's just too boring. We can leave that for the other long, boring webinars. So let's get started. We're going to have some fun today because this is going to be a beautiful story told by Martin. So let's have a cheers for this journey. And you actually have a skips glass, I see.
Yeah, indeed. Yes. Thanks, Henriette. Cheers.
And also thank you to Maritime Research Alliance and Thomas Roslø for making these Wednesday tidbits with the researchers from the different maritime universities possible. So Martin, the floor is yours. We are looking so much forward to leaning back and enjoying this beautiful tidbits.
Thank you very much, Henriette. I will not lean back at all because I have to present 150 years of maritime history in 15 minutes. So that's quite something. So let's get started. I'll start by sharing my screen and this should work with this. So let's get into this one and we get into the PowerPoint. And I hope that you can now see the slides of the Norden. Is that, can you see that?
Perfect.
It's coming. Thank you so much. So once again, welcome. 15 minutes of 150 years history of Norden. I really look forward to that. I better get started. It was very, very great honor and fantastic for me to get this opportunity to write a book about Norden's history. Norden, as all of you know, is one of the most amazing and important Danish shipping companies. So of course, that was just fantastic for me as an economic historian, as a shipping historian. And when I start writing books like this, I always will work with a basic curiosity. So I will work problem-oriented. And this is something I'll come back to in a moment. So of course, I spent the first couple of months of finding out what is it actually that I find interesting in this particular work. And the basic curiosity behind the Norden book was concerned actually the last 50 years of the history. So my question was how Norden changed, how and why Norden changed its strategic course from being a small but wealthy company in the early 70s to becoming one of the largest operators, particularly dry bulk operators in the world after the year 2000. So that's very much based on defining the critical decisions and management regimes. Second question would be which, if any, role did the long history of Norden play in this late development? And the third question that I raised with my book was how, if at all, does this micro-history of Norden mirror the larger history of modern Danish shipping? So those were the three concerns that I work with. And it's very important for me to say already now that this is just one story or one history of Norden. You could also have imagined other histories of Norden. You could have looked at the role of technology, or you could have seen Norden as a working place. You could have regarded the history from the workers' perspectives, from the sailors' perspective, from a technology perspective, from the ships, from the vessels, many others. This book is very concerned with the decisions, the strategies, the management, and all this seen in the context of course, the world economy, the Danish development, and the Danish shipping environment. So just very briefly about methodology and theory with this work. As I mentioned, it's problem-oriented work with this book. It's built on written sources. I have had open access to Norton's archive, and I did not have any censorship. That's also important to keep in mind. I could write what I wanted to write. Most important sources for me were the annual reports, the annual accounts, the board minutes, the management correspondence, and other things. I also worked, of course, with open sources, also important articles, from reports, newspapers, and other things. And then I had conversations, and that's also important to distinguish between conversations and interviews. I had these conversations, and it was at a pretty late stage of the work. So only when I had my ideas about what had happened, then I had these conversations with key actors, including Alison and Johanne Riegels, Carsten Mortensen, Niels Thorsen. I was so lucky also to meet Niels Thorsen. He's a very old man, but it was a great honor to meet him. Former chairman in the 1980s, Jan Renbo and many others. When I write like this, I'm also using theory. So of course it's an empirical work, but I actually have a theoretical framework that helps me to navigate this huge complexity of 150 years. And my research, let's say navigation using a maritime metaphor, has been Neil Flickstein's work as American professor in economic sociology on the transformation of corporate control back from 1990s. And his basic idea is that key actors in any organization have an embedded interest in the existing strategies and structures because they represent them. But all companies at certain stages will face crises and challenges due to what he terms as internal and external impetus for change. Such impetus for change could be new technologies, financial crisis, managerial failures, could also be world wars, could be a pandemic, for instance, and other things. These things, sometimes you're in control of them, sometimes not, but they are impetus for change, and your strategies in some cases have to change accordingly, and you have to redefine the course of your company. I talk about corporate regimes, and that's defined as a time period of some length when the strategy, the organizational structure, and the key actors representing these strategies and structures are stable or similar in a long time period. This is something I worked with with our PhD dissertation back in 2005. And then, of course, you also have corporate transition, and those are the important and interesting time periods in a historical perspective of a company. And that's when all of this change. There's an impetus for change from external side, and then both the strategies, the organizational structures, and the key actors change, and that's a corporate transition that often then leads to a new corporate regime, which is then the stable time period. Regime sounds dramatic, as something like a political regime or something like that, but it's not. It's actually just a stability in a time period of strategy, structure, and key actors. So that was a bit about methodology and theory. So let's get started with this long history. I start my book in a very complete place, and that's in Amaliegade 49, and there's a picture of that corner building. I think most of you know it already, just opposite Maersk, and very concrete meeting in April 12, 1972. Meeting taking place in the meeting room, which is on the first floor, right on top of Christian Møller's efterfølger. Very nice shop. This is unfortunately closed now, down on that corner. In this meeting was 3 members only of the board: Hartmann, Godfred Hartmann, Gunvar Reimann, which represented the family ownership, and Holger Bech-Bruun. This was a critical meeting, maybe the most critical meeting in the history of Norden, in the modern history of Norden, because this is the meeting when they decided whether they should round off Norden and then say, well, this was it. We are only a company with 4 old vessels. It was a very small company at this time, but was also a company with a balance assets of more than 90 million Danish kroner at the time, of which most of them were actually liquids that they could use. There was some money that they could spend. So that was a wealthy company, but still you could, decide to say, well, let other people spend the money, and why would we do that? So the decision was, should Norden be closed and the capital dispersed to shareholders, or should the board decide to invest in a new, larger type of ship, completely new type of ship, namely the dry bulk vessels that we also know from today? So this was a transition between the old general cargo ships towards the modern dry bulk vessels. So when I sort of thought about this, what was going on here, I realized that this was very close to the 100 years anniversary. That was just the year before. So Norden was basically 101 years old at this time. And when I looked at the history back in Norden, I realized that there was an interesting pattern in the history, namely that Norden both represented the innovative drive of investing like in new vessels, new technology, and it also possessed the history of a very conservative, cautious company that maybe likely could have said, well, that was it. Let's just keep a holding company or an empty company or something like that and continue our very quiet existence in a very nice building and so on. But both areas possessed, and this is something I'll talk about when we talk about the long history of Norden from 1871 to 150 years back or forward. When I look at this, I did look at it as three phases, and here I'm drawing like with a very large pencil of the historian. So these are rough drawings, you could say. The first phase of the three phases is from 1871, the founding by MC Holm, you see in the corner of this slide. And in this time period, this is the pioneer time period of Norden. So this is where you can say the 100th anniversary company possessed a leg of being a pioneer, being an innovative company. This is a time period where MC Holm, he operated a fleet of steamships, already in the 1880s, expanding to more than 5 steamships, of which some of them were the largest in the country. He operated these from his headquarters in Havnegade in Copenhagen via telegraphy. Interesting little anecdote from the annual report was that he spent more money on telegraphy than he spent on salaries to his employees. So he was definitely a person who grasped new technology, and at that time it was amazing technology. Certainly, you could for the first time in instant time send messages to the other side of the world, and you could have steamships instead of sailing ships. Where steamships you can actually predict when the ships would arrive. So I think you can compare the technological transformation in the 1880s, 1870s, and 80s to the technological transformation of the 1990s and 2000s with digitalization. I think it's on the same level, and it's just as dramatic. It's a whole new paradigm, and MC Holm was in the front of this. When he passed away, it was Peter Donnelly Brown who took over in the early 1890s, and he kind of continued that pioneer role, and he became a leading shipping man in Copenhagen around the year 1900, and actually continued as such until the 1920s, and so with also the First World War. After Peter Donnelly Brown passed away in the early 1930s, it was his son, who, by the way, had the same name. It is me who has added the senior and the junior just to be able to distinguish between the two. They had exactly the same name. Peter Donnelly Brown was both of them. But the junior Donnelly Brown was more cautious. So he was more cautious investments. You could say he was a ship owner rather than an operator. He was and no one became a very passive ship owner that kind of owned these ships like a passive investor, and then they chartered the ships out to companies, such as EAC and also East Asiatic company ÖK, but also other companies in both in Denmark and abroad. End result was that Norden had some series in the 1930s and after the Second World War of ships, all of them, by the way, built in Denmark, in Nakskov and at BRV. But besides this, not much happened. And the 1950s and in particular 1960s was extremely quiet. They only received one ship in the 1960s. So that was a very, very quiet time period. And the result was that Norden kind of dropped down as in relevance in Danish shipping. So if you look at 1970, Norden was not even in the top 10 in terms of tonnage in Danish shipping. And other companies continue to be important, old companies such as DFDS and obviously AP Møller and Maersk, and also EAC and Lauritz and others. And then there were also some newcomers in this time period who had, exceeded Norden at this stage, for instance, Ove Skov and others. But that was that quiet time period. And this is why that critical time was between 1960s and 1970s, when Norden became, what you can say, again, a pioneer in Danish shipping. This small board of directors in 1972, they did indeed decide to invest in dry bulk vessels. Not only in one, but a series of 6 vessels appeared Mitsui in Japan for Norden in the 1970s and early 80s. And this was kind of the backbone of the Norden that we know today, the modern operator of dry bulk vessels. And by the way, also an extremely important close linkage to Japan that was confirmed and to some extent also established in this time period. For this time, there are some critical words, of course, or years. You can say that in 1985, it's important that Norden also became an operator and ship owner of the product tankers segment, and history that is very interesting, and I hope some of you will read in my book, which is history also of collaboration with BRV and Odfjell in Norway and also DIFCO, that is an investment company in Denmark, a huge one. And actually, those were very important step for Norden that getting into this segment, and that happens in the mid 1980s. Another important stage was when Sten Krabbe from Maersk became CEO in 1988, and he controlled or was CEO of the company in the 1980s and 90s, late 80s and 90s and early 2000s. And it was kind of the internationalization of the modern Norden as we know it today. So Sten Krabbe is definitely a defining person in the modern history of Norden, and he took many of the leadership principles from Maersk and took them to Norden. And he also, by the way, took second managers with him for the various divisions that was created at this time, also from Maersk. So Maersk also plays an important role in the Norden history. And Carsten Mortensen was one of them. He was one of the former Maersk people, managers from the dry bulk area. And he became the CEO in 2005, and then the super cycle came. And we know that super cycle, and that was in dry bulk, that was then exceeded by the crisis of the 2010s. It's been a very, very difficult decade in dry bulk shipping that we've seen after the financial crisis. So let me talk a little bit about the Norden as we know it today. I had actually prepared that I would present several regimes, but that must be for another day where we have more time. Both the regime of Jørgen Krohl and Sten Krabbe and of Carsten Mortensen. But now I'll talk about Jan Rindbo, as this is where we are now, and I think many of you are interested in what we have there. So what I see on the strategy side is focus on few sub-segments, focus on the commercial side, and then a digital transformation. And I think that the most important key term to understand Jan Rindbo's strategy is that no one should be able, per definition, to make money in any market. And that's an extremely ambitious vision to have in dry bulk shipping. You need to set up an extremely agile and flexible system with a lot of transparency about small profit-oriented groups. And I think the smart thing in Norden today is that this commercial focus and this agile focus and decentralized focus is combined with a digital turn, so a digital transformation, so that Norden now is on a journey to empower the small teams with digital tools, where they take advantage of the size they have with more than 300 vessels operated around the world, and a huge pile of information due to that size. If you look at the structure, it's about performance teams, it's about this dry operator, tanker operator, asset management, and Jan, when I talked with him, he was very concerned on not having a CEO profit line, but rather to have several profit lines in Norden, so that, as an employee, it's not kind of your result, it's not a result of a CEO deciding to acquire 10 new huge large vessels, and thus creating a great future if the market is good, and a terrible one if the market is bad, because you have all these assets. But instead to say, you are actually responsible for your own profit line, and it's possible both for yourself but also for the management to see exactly what has been going on around the organization with these various teams. So I think that's the basic structure, but that's of course a very long story, very short. I will now conclude my small little pitch for the book, which look like this. Here it is. So my first question was, which, if any, role did the long history of Norden play? I think the most important here is the balance in Norden's long history between these opportunistic professionals, including Jan Renbo and Carsten Mortensen. When I say opportunistic, I mean it positively. People who are able to grasp opportunities, and then a very stable ownership that I did not talk about today, but they will find much more about in the book, which is the family ownership. And I had a picture earlier about with Alison Riegels. I don't know if you noted that. But I think Alison has actually played a key role in the history of Norden that has been overlooked by the public completely, because without Alison's insistence that Norden should become and stay independent in the 2000s, when Torm tried to take over the company, then there would have been no Norden today. So that's just a clear fact that people should keep in mind. That she actually had and that was not a trivial thing. That was a quite brave thing to do, which he did back then. But they have not only done that, they've also, as a family, always insisted on taking care of stakeholders, including employees, environment, and others, and but at the same time also to get these commercial opportunities that arise. However, it all does the microhistory of Norden mirror the larger history of modern Danish shipping. I'm very concerned and become more and more interested in this concept of the Florissant epochs. We know the Florissant, the Florissante tid in Danish in the 18th century, in the 1780s, but there's also a Florissant epoch, a golden age in the 1880s and up to the First War in Danish shipping. And then I think again today, actually, from the early 2000s, late 90s until today, is also a golden age in the long history of modern Danish shipping. And I think you can say that Norden has been a defining actor in the second and the third. And if you look at my presentation, it was actually exactly in the before First World War in the 1890s and early 20th century that Norden really flourished and were a pioneer. But that was also when Danish shipping flourished. It was also when the other big Danish shipping companies was founded. And then again now, Norden prospered and really had a fantastic time when the world globalized and Danish shipping had its, let's say, third golden age. And that was in the 2000s and 2010s and up to the 20s, and hopefully also sometimes in the future. This was enough for me. I hope that there will be some questions in the next 10 minutes. So I will stop sharing now and open my chat, and then you're welcome either to write a chat or to take over if you have a question.
I'm also coming back here. Thank you so much, Martin. I hope all of you out there have digested 115 years story of Norden in 15 minutes. That's quite of a challenge. So if you have any questions to Martin, if you want him to deepen out some of perhaps the epochs where he didn't deep out here, you are welcome to put a question in the chat or in the Q&A session. So I have a question for you, Martin, because I heard that Norden, they have actually just, within the last year or two turned into a strategy where they are so-called asset light. So they hardly don't own any ships any longer. Can you tell a little bit about that?
Yeah, they have divided the company in an asset management and an operator. There's actually two operator parts, one for dry bulk and one for product tanker. But it's true that in order to be so agile and to be able to take these fast moves and in this way to make money in any market, they needed to adopt an asset light profile. But I think you have to keep in mind that they still have the asset management part. So there's actually still an aspect in Norden where they own the vessels and where they invest in vessels, and they find times where they can make money on the asset play side as well. And they have also told me, Norden, that it's actually very interesting that in particularly for Japanese customers, it's very important that you continue to be a ship owner. There's something about being a clean operator and also a ship owner you don't want to just take that step. You are kind of classified in a different way. But I also think that it is important for the company. I think they recognize that they also have that technical understanding that follows with being a ship owner. So I don't think that you will see in any near future a situation where they will be completely asset light and not a ship owner.
But still, if they have around 300 vessels, I think they have like they own perhaps 30 vessels or something like that. I don't know the numbers, but it's very, very low compared to the total number of ships they're operating. So they are getting there to be a ship management company or a shipping company more than a ship owner in the traditional way. So this brings me to the next question that you might want to answer with this, also from David Grenin, who is asking, where will Norden be in 5 years?
Yeah, I just opened also my Q&A. Where will Norden be in 5 years? I think Norden is on a very good path now, and I think they now have a situation where they can actually operate in an agile way and follow markets. So it means that Norden will definitely be around in 5 years, and they will definitely be a world-leading company within the dry bulk segment. That's for sure. And it's a company that will use the digitalization. I think they will be even more digital. So what I'm excited to see with Norden is to see if they actually will take the next step in digitalization and start to develop rather different type of services, as you see, for instance, Maersk Tankers are doing on digital side, or if they will continue not to do that, but only sort of to support themselves. That will be interesting to see. And it will also be interesting to see, if you look at the product tanker segment, if they continue to decide to have that balance between both being in product tank and in dry bulk, and if they continue to see advantages with the combination of the two. It might be and it might not be. So that's actually something that I look forward to see, if they will continue to have both, or if Norient, that is the product tanker pool that they own, will have a more sort of separate development outside the dry bulk. I don't know, that might be the case, but I actually think that, as far as I know at this stage, they do see synergies between the two segments.
It's a little bit also, there are hard times for bulk, then there are good times for tankers. So it's a little bit what we call in Danish, gyngerne og karusellerne. But we also do see a tendency in the business that ship owners, they are becoming more specialized, such as Tom, as a good comparison, that they were both and now they're only tank, and they're actually doing pretty well after they did that change. But we'll have to see that. We don't know what strategy Renbo he has in his mind for that. So we will
already now see Renbo has been around for some time now, and I think we have he has shown he's not I don't regard Renbo as a newcomer anymore. He has actually now taken the Norden to a specific course, and he has that's also why I regard him as, in his own right, as a regime in the long history of Norden. And I think the digital part is extremely important, together, of course, with the green transition for the future of shipping, but very much also for the future of Norden. And I'm confident that they do have the size and the ambitions, and also the ownership, to invest in these areas. Let's see, we have another question that we can take.
Yeah, we have actually two, but let's jump into the one from Jan Knudsen, who is asking how large part of the current strong financial results you dedicate to digitalization.
Yeah, thanks, Jan. That's again, like David's, a very good question. I think that there are two things I would dedicate this to, and one thing is, I still think their results in Norden mirrors the overall development of the market. So I don't think that you don't have a complete separation between the two, and that's probably also not the vision from Jan. They just need to make money still, not a lot, but some, also in a difficult market. So I think the current strong result is a mirror of the current strong market, in particular in dry bulk. So that's for sure. But I also think the other aspect is the organizational structure, including digitalization. So I think that an important aspect of the current performance in Norden is that they have made these small performance-oriented agile teams that are able to take fast decisions and have the knowledge to do so. And digitalization is a tool for let's say strong decision-taking processes in the company. But as also other companies have these digitalization opportunities. So this is not separate for no one, but what maybe separates them is, as a big company, they have an opportunities for creating big databases, so big data and decision-taking support that would be difficult for a small competitor in particular. So it might be that even though dry bulk is an extremely segmented market, then it might be that the digitalization could lead to some kind of structural change where some companies, so for instance, Pacific and Altendorf and companies like Norden that are large players, but in this segmented market could become even larger in the coming years due to digitalization and the advantages they have as big players.
Yeah, exactly. They are more agile and they can make they can experience more within a part of their business. So when we see that many of the ship owners, they are hiring in a lot of IT consultants and IT persons. So what I hear is that shipping companies, they are becoming IT companies. Do you have a comment on that one? And sorry to all of you who have to leave. We have it's 12:30 now, so if you just feel to leave, jump out, and this session will be recorded, so you will be able to watch everything again or share it with your colleagues at our YouTube channel for TITBIT. So just lean back, you'll have the link forwarded by email later on. So please, Martin, go ahead.
Yeah, I think that it's natural that in the transition where you digitalize and you need to set up a lot of new procedures and systems, you need to also invest also in a lot of human resources, people who have the knowledge that is necessary for that transition. But I still think that in shipping you need to have employees that have that specific knowledge of a very, very peculiar market and a very peculiar, let's say, market logic that you find in shipping. So I don't foresee a future without maritime educations or without maritime profiles. I foresee a future where we have a combination of various competences, including digital competences, but also, by the way, environmental competences and people who have knowledge about the green transition. And then the maritime people. But one of the things that we do at CBS now is that we really are investing more now in new colleagues that can help us on teaching our students about digitalization and shipping. So this is one of the things that is very critical for us. We have just now launched a new PhD position that is open for the market now in the maritime digitalization. We follow up with a postdoc in the fall. And we will definitely and also have new courses within that field. So of course we also see that there is a need from and respond to that from the sector.
So let's stay in touch for results when your PhD and postdocs are hired in, and when they get to know some interesting stuff, please tell us, and we will make a tidbit with them as well. Of course, when in a year or 2 or 3 or whatever. So we have one last question. And that is from Henning Morgan. And he's asking you, how do you see the golden eras in Danish shipping versus the developments in the world economy? And did Norden prosper due to the world economy? Sorry, probably need to be more background.
Yeah, thanks, Henning. That's again an excellent question, but also a large question.
Yeah.
I think that there is a difference between having the opportunities to prosper, for instance, due to a strong world economy, and then actually to prosper and actually to be innovative. I think the difference is that you need people and you need talents who are able to exploit these opportunities. And you have a lot of examples in history of great opportunities and great time periods and fantastic, circumstances that were not grasped, where the actors were unable to grasp these opportunities and to move forward with new companies. But what I'm interested in understanding, and I think is critical in these time periods, both the golden age of the 1880s and 1890s and the present one, is that we see a lot of innovation in Danish shipping. We also see entrepreneurship. And I think one of the most interesting things in Danish shipping today is actually not the old companies, but all the newcomers, that we actually see a lot of new companies and interesting people who are setting up new, business models, new ways to approach shipping. We see, for instance, companies that are specialized in raising huge funds from for instance, pension funds, that they then invest in vessels with the shipping expertise. So that could be, for instance, D4 Capital or Navigara, as example, Celsius Shipping also. So this is extremely interesting that you see that development. And the other side, you also see completely different business model where you have newcomers that are completely asset light, that have no ownership whatsoever, and are able to be extremely flexible in for instance, dry bulk area. So I think that that's very, very promising and interesting that you see this area of entrepreneurship. And I see some let's say resonance and it mirrors a little bit what happened in the 1880s and 1890s in Danish shipping, where you also saw new companies grasping the opportunities for, with particular for steamships, but also for telegraphy, but of course also for globalization, because it's correct as Henning writes that this is also two global areas, two global eras rather. It's a global era before the First World War, and it's a global era now. So it's a very interesting, very few people actually know that. But for instance, there was a Nordic monetary union in the 1880s and 1890s. So you could actually use the same money in Denmark, Sweden, and Norway, which is even more integration than we have today. And you could actually very easily make transfer of money over the borders at that time. But that was very difficult in the mid 20th century. Then you saw a completely different development. And I think shipping in general tends to flourish when you have these global integration waves, where you have opportunities to trade across the borders, not only in physical trade but also in financial trade and other types of trades.
Absolutely. Well, perhaps you can help us with a speaker who can explain a little bit about the new constructions of shipping companies who are completely asset light. I would like to do a tidbit about that one. I think it's interesting because it's as we have seen, there has been several of these new companies starting up in Denmark within the last couple of years. So it has come here to stay, I think. So please help me out if you have a good idea to a speaker or some speakers who could give a tidbit on that one. Interesting. So we have this tidbit has come to an end. I would love to say thank you to you for being with us for the last half hour, and also to all of you out there who have listened along, and of course to Thomas Rosling from Maritime Research Alliance and the Danish Maritime Fund for making this possible, this little tidbit for your lunch. If you want to watch this tidbit again, my colleague, she just wrote here in the chat our different links, all for signing up for other tidbits, all for listening along in the YouTube channel. And we have actually created a little channel for tidbits with the researchers from the Maritime Research Alliance. So now you can have like a full program of all the tidbits coming up on that one. So tune in for that one, and tune in tomorrow at 12 o'clock, where we will have a DTU coming in. And that is a guy called Frank Skov Christensen. And he's going to speak about, while we are waiting for the green fuels, let's focus on the digitalization, because that is going to make the big difference on the journey for the green transformation. So that is going to be a very, very interesting one. Full focus on digitalization. Tune in tomorrow at 12, and let's say cheers and have a wonderful day out there. Thank you to everyone. Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Jeg ringer lige til dig.